Hello, everyone. I am today again back for the podcast in the Founders Journal, and we have today two of our amazing guests. One is Niko, who is from Juttu, and then Karim, who is from Oppla, and myself, Abhishek, who is from Oppla as well as the Founders Journal. Well, welcome, Niko, and welcome, Karim, to the Founders Journal.
Thanks so much for having me.
Amazing. So before we diving in, just wanted to give a brief introduction about Karim and Nico. If you guys can feel free to just put up one or two line of introduction.
Sure thing, I can go ahead. So my name is Karim, based out of Toronto, Canada. Bit of a background about myself. I started in banking investment, but left that world a long time ago and pivoted into product. So been doing product design, product experience. Then after that, got into product management and now focusing on product growth. Really excited about anything that has to do with how to grow a product, how to scale, and even the business side of things. And really excited about this podcast. Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Karim. Nico, what about yourself?
Cool. Yeah, I'm originally from Germany, and I'm right now in Japan, and I'm a founder of a AI startup in 2025, which is an exciting time to be alive. I did product coaching of product teams in larger organizations before that. Did CS in the past, like kind of the full stack tech person. And yeah, now I'm building something and happy to share all the things that I've learned along the way so far.
Awesome, Nico. This is really amazing. And thanks, Karim, and thanks, Nico, for all the introductions. Let's dive in. So, Nico, why don't we start with you? You were mentioning before this call as well and during your introduction that you're working on something which is related to AI and product space, I believe. Why don't you give a glimpse in that world to our learners?
Yeah, I think I might be not. I might actually be somewhat of an expert at that because in the sense that product tooling is like a specifically hard space, I think, especially for people who come not from the product space. So last year I launched a tool with co-founders. We built something around process optimizations of getting teams to talk to customers more. And there was like some sense of AI in there, but it was more about solving a real problem first. It turns out that we learned the hard way that like doing more customer interviews is for most product teams a vitamin and not a painkiller. So that is a hard lesson learned. That's not probably what the customer will tell you, but it is what we found out after many attempts to get people to stick with our solution. The AI angle for product teams is particularly interesting if it saves some time. And so the pivot that happened then was to say, hey, let's make a form of feedback giving that is less effort than interviews, which is surveys, a lot more qualitative, make this better, right? Give more rich data in the form of feedback that product teams actually still like are using way more than interviews, even if they don't like to admit that. So that's how the pivot came to be. Is like, well, interviews are a lot of work for the teams, so we build a solution for them, but they still have to do them. And then we got pragmatic and we're like, what are you actually doing? And these product teams are doing surveys because they are less effort for them, if we're honest.
Yeah.
They're easier to spin up. And so we, with like Juttu V2, the Juttu.co product that is out now, it is an AI survey tool, which basically creates conversational surveys that on the fly demands AI follow-up questions, generates AI follow-up questions so it can kind of ask the why behind the primary answer of the survey giver, the survey responder. That's the basic idea, and that's how AI and product for the product space kind of comes together.
I see. So the problem that you're trying to solve here for the product team specifically is how they can leverage artificial intelligence. Instead of just creating the service, you want to initiate the conversation in between two different customers or the end users and in between the product team. So kind of handshaking and bridging this particular gap utilizing the agentic AI or AI artificial intelligence right here. Isn't it?
Yes. So I think it's bringing more qualitative data to the product teams without them having to do a full-on conversation with 30 customers. Now, I would want them to do the conversation too, but just coming from the reality that right now they're using a Google form to get some kind of feedback, the idea was how can we enrich that experience so they feel more close to the customer, feel like they have more of a sense of what they actually think and feel, instead of just having like a rating on a scale from 1 to 5, so bringing more quality to surveys, basically. That is the idea.
Interesting. So help us go through this particular route, like how you identified this idea and like what did you do to validate this idea initially?
Yeah. So I think one of the most fun learnings that I have as a founder now, coming from product management, before that coming from CS, is that stuff doesn't feel and happen like it is in the books. So I even worked as a product discovery coach for a couple of years, and so I taught by the book stuff. I was like, you should here are your assumptions, map them, invalidate them by these and these experiments. And as a founder, stuff got more messy. It got a lot more messy. So, but still, of course, I try to keep this in mind. So the assumption was that product teams need more data in order to make decisions with more confidence. We talked to 100 product managers and product leaders, and we without biased questions, got to that point where they're like, yes, I mean, if I can stand behind a decision, I feel a lot better. It makes my job a lot easier, right? Not just to get buy-in from management, but also to just like feel confident that we're actually not building crap. It's easier to motivate a team that way too. Okay, so that was the primary kind of assumption that we had that we got right, I think. And then our solution answer to that was just one where it's like, well, then you should do more interviews, because that will be the most easy way to get rich data from your customers. And then that was like the solution for us. And then we built an automation that helps them with that. But the reality was that that's not what they wanted to do. That's too much sacrifice. That's too much effort for the mainstream product manager, because they have a full schedule, And so the next, we failed with that solution. Took us too long. Failed with that solution. Learned from it. We're like, okay, the base assumption is still right. These teams need more evidence to make decisions with confidence. So
Right.
How can they get confidence? Well, right now there's unmoderated user data. There's different modalities, and the survey is the most used one. We just looked at Lenny's newsletter, and he did a massive survey of what are the most used tools, and surveys tend to be the most used. So I was like, okay, then surveys are how they're getting currently data. So let's make the assumption that if we can increase the quality of data coming from that modality, that will be valuable to product teams to make decisions with confidence. And that's how we got to AI surveys, to just think surveys haven't changed in 40 years or in 20 years, like Google Forms exists for 20 years. So let's just think how AI would make that better. That's how we got to it.
Interesting. And because you're really hitting the main pain point of almost every product manager, like including myself. What I don't want to do is like go on these customer calls always just to try or decipher something. I feel like what I will do is like I will use a surveys solution, something like yours, Juttu or something, where I want to get the all data and then maybe leverage artificial intelligence to get the sentiment out of it, right? And ideally fetching the signals out of it. Once I have deciphered the signals, then I want to work on top of that, right? But just out of curiosity, I've what according to you, like what are the percentage of product managers in your interviews over here? What is the number of percentage of the product managers they usually are only leveraging service, or maybe like more than 50% of the time they are leveraging service, or are they not leveraging the user behavior analytics tools, etc.? Like, are they only leveraging service? So that's what I'm trying to decipher. Yeah.
Yeah. So the kind of the mix, the modality mix, obviously ranges like dramatically from maturity of the company, size of the company, and all these things. I would say, first of all, the majority of companies still doesn't do any of it. I think that's a really important. That's a really important learning. Like I relearn this all the time, because we live in our little bubble and we post like thought leader stuff on LinkedIn, and we think, okay, everybody surely got it by now. And the reality is that as a like positioning myself as a product discovery coach over the last years before becoming full-time founder was all about like getting the people to be even better in their discovery practices, when in reality what the job mostly entailed was just getting people off the ground, like getting them off zero, right? Getting them to the point where they actually incorporate user feedback regularly, no matter the modality. So that's maybe the most important caveat. And I think as somebody building in the space, it is really important to have a realistic expectation of that, because otherwise you just build stuff for like a hypothetical world, which like it seems real on LinkedIn but
Right.
is not, or and I got that wrong for sure in the past. So that's the first one. The second one is teams that do use modality. In my personal experience, they always the first thing their mind goes to is talking to users in some kind of call. Yeah.
I see.
Since remote is possible, I remember times when customers would actually come into the office. That was a big effort. But now with like Zoom, you just feel like, okay, that seems easy. It seems low setup. Like, okay, do we need an interview guide? Man, we can just talk to somebody.
Right.
Maybe a sales rep is there too. Maybe we just join a key account executive call.
Right.
But then once they did that, it's like it's uncomfortable. They get negative feedback. They don't know how to handle questions. It's time intensive. And so then the next thing that comes to mind is often a survey, or if they have a prototype, it's like a maze kind of thing, right? Like, okay, let's do an unmoderated user test there. But in my experience, you have to have a PM or a designer who's kind of nerding out about the unmoderated space, because it's not common knowledge how to leverage these tools effectively. And if your company doesn't provide the infrastructure to say, hey, we have these tools for you available at the fingertips, and this is how you use them, I don't see that many PMs by themselves acquire these tools, acquire the skills to use them, etc. So that's why the survey is a well understood modality. Everybody knows what a survey is. They are free. Yeah, the most survey tools there's many survey tools that are free, and like, okay, Typeform costs money, but like everybody knows them, right? And so it's approachable. I think that's why it's the most used modality.
Interesting. Like you're really hitting like really important points over here, Niko. So kudos to you identifying that problem space, because I personally wish that I had a tool something like this, because myself and Karim were discussing about the same tool. Like we both have worked at Viral Nation, that's one of the influencer marketing organization, and Karim was stating that, hey, you know what? Like I was actually looking for a tool something like this. It would be way better if I had this back in like 2 years back from today. So to your point, like you have identified a problem that you are trying to solve, which is really amazing. Like, kind of pivoting from there is strategy, like going a bit more detail in the product management space, because you are a product like discovery coach. How like you are leveraging technology currently plus AI to identify what you should be building on next, you in your tool in itself.
The big universe.
You mean you mean how I'm using how I'm using tools in AI to figure out what to build next for the product?
Exactly. So like how you mentioned that it would be good for better way, like PM should have certain tools on the fingerprints, right?
Yeah.
Which type
Yeah.
of tool will you use to kind of do the discovery?
Yeah. So I think I would follow like pretty easily like what I think like doing a deep research on like a basic market analysis can be really helpful. Like use like one of those like deep research tools and start with like a somewhat clever prompt of like I want to go into the space. Please analyze like all the different players there, and especially if you go into like provide me quotes of people that are having issues. What you can get is like you can basically like automate a little bit of Reddit research of getting I'm thinking from the start, right? Like if you start,
Right. Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't know much about the space. Okay, if you have existing customers, obviously the existing customers are the base data lake to mine. If you don't have customers, like mine Reddit. If you have existing customers and you want to improve the product for them, then this is the best data to get. So the question is, what data do you already have for them? So this is how I think about discovery. What data is already there, because new data is always expensive, hard to get.
Exactly.
Juttu obviously tries to help you to get new data, but you should always think about what you already have. And so like tools, like I've been playing around with Next app. It's basically just like a tool for more corporate players to bring in all their customer calls, etc. and even sales calls, and be able to like query that with like LLM type of search. And it ingests basically everything from survey responses to sales calls. But there's other tools like that just try to connect the dots and basically make existing qualitative messy data searchable, which is now possible, which wasn't indexable before AI really. So that's where I would start. See what tooling you have there, specifically what to use. Yeah, like if you have something like NextStep, or if you have like other tools that really make it easy to search through existing feedback, that's great. Building your own systems with like custom GPTs and stuff, like it's probably too much to get into now. Because it requires usually some chain of prompting. I'm realizing it is usually not a one-shot thing, and then it's really getting new data in case that existing data doesn't fit. So then it is first for me, discovery calls always do them with real people and do them open, because you're trying to figure out problems. You're not trying to get very specific percentage, like how many percent of people like this. It is about understanding. So then open conversations are still the best thing. And once you have a more specific idea, you can go unmoderated, you can go survey, you can do A/B tests, all these things. So that's the way I think about it. Think like very broad. Okay, maybe I need data from the market. Can I get data from my users? Do I need to produce new data? Well, then let's start with open questions, qualitative, and then narrow it down to quantitative once you have a very specific idea. That's kind of how I think about that.
This is amazing, Nico. And why I think so, because you are stating what almost every founder should go ahead and do it. Like first, try to identify what exactly are the pain points of the niche that you are trying to solve a problem for, right? So maybe it is Reddit, maybe it is like deep research on Perplexity, or like any kind of a tool right now. Every other LLM tool is having the deep research, so use that. What I usually do is like I will go on G2 or I will go on Crunchbase, try to identify like what's the growth percentage, stuff like that, and what's the trends of the number of users coming on their platform, etc. And from there onwards, if let's say for an example, if I have to find a solution where a tool like Mixpanel or Amplitude or Pendo, etc., right, like they're humongous in the data analytics or the user behavior analytics solution. So what I usually will go is like in the G2, I know that there are concerns and questions. Similarly in the Capterra, and similarly if I go on the LinkedIn page or the Twitter, they will start like people are talking about those things, right? And from there onwards, I start identifying what is the main or like the common pain point being arrived, right? And the same thing as like bringing the data from the Reddit as well. That's what I will do. But that is one thing I've just understood is like every time all these organizations, including PM, as you were mentioning as well, we are leveraging multiple tools, right? Do you really think that any PM will need multiple tools in the context? They need a survey, conversation tool, then they need a user behavior analytics tool. Then may need like for the growth, they may need experiment, A/B testing tool, etc. And then the planning and the road mapping thing, right? Like, do you believe that these are the bare minimal or the basic tools, or is there like you have a different approach towards this whole product management space?
Tooling space in the future, yeah. So what I believe is that machine to machine communication will obviously become even more important than it already is. Meaning that right now integrations is one of the most mentioned needs for product management tools, like anything in that space, right? It's usually I want my Jira to be connected to my blah blah blah, like that is I want Slack notifications for this and this. So that is maybe to because you were basically mentioning like verticals of like, will we have all these verticals? And I guess your question leads towards, will we have more verticals? Will we have less? Like, how will that develop? And just high level, I think connection between tools will become more important. But I've been thinking about this a lot. It is not that we will get rid of vertical SaaS in product tooling. The reason for that is, I mean, obviously I'm stating a belief here. We will see how the future plays out. But the reason is just that there's interfaces that are super specific. So just a very simple, like you want control and you want interfaces, and interfaces like might do different things in the background, and these processes might be, calling APIs, might be calling LLMs, but you'd still want like a place that allows you to control AI. So what I'm saying is static tools like Jira, obviously, like they exist, okay? And somebody will still want to have a Trello board or a Jira board or linear board. That's just visual representation. So basically, the front end has value. The
Right.
question now is how much value does it have? But I don't want all my tickets as chat notifications or as Slack notifications. I want my tickets on a dashboard. So
Right.
I think we can argue whether or not they should be high ticket software items, right? That like a dashboard like is very expensive for a team to manage.
Exactly.
But the front end has value. Now with Juttu in particular building surveys, I thought about this and I was like, okay, surveys are a commodity. Survey tools are a commodity. So the
Right.
question is, will product teams actually pay for a survey tool? And then I thought, what can I do on top of the very basic? And it is basically saying, okay, AI is added in Juttu in three ways. It's how you can create surveys with a prompt, right? Give me the context of what you want to find out, and in a few seconds, like I'll generate a survey for you with the questions. Then the second part is that it asks AI questions during the survey taking experience for the respondent. So it understands the context of the survey, the prior answer of the respondent, and then makes a smart like question that is related to the context of both the survey and the person. And the third one is analysis of the data. Okay. So then I looked at these three and I was like, okay, you need an interface to feel a sense of control over this. You don't want to one shot a survey with a prompt and then the survey go out there to your customers. Because you need an interface to say, okay, great, you generated something for me. Now I want to edit.
Yeah.
Now I want to change. Now I want to delete. You got this wrong. And then the second part is like, and then it does follow-up questions. And so you want control over like, please don't take this conversation like to like something completely illegal or something
Correct.
completely wrong. Like I want this survey experience, yes, to be smart, but please don't be too like don't get like smart
Crazy.
with me, in the sense, don't get cheeky with me, So you want to control the AI to some degree, and with analysis, it's the same. Now, that's kind of where I got to, is like we will need systems, interfaces, front ends that help us to easily get started with some things, so we don't have to start from scratch. So basically, there's some priors in the software. It's like, okay, we're creating surveys here. You don't need to explain to me every time that I want to create a survey. This is an interface that helps you create surveys. It's already primed for that. It includes best practices, so you don't have to adjust like the way you work with it every time you need to. It includes best practices for question creation, let's say. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
And the same with analysis, right? You can dump your survey question, like your survey answers, into an LLM right now, but you then have to every time include like, please, like, don't use this bias, And so it's just repeat work. And so what I'm thinking about, to answer your question about the product tooling space in the future, is I think it will be a lot more about doing actual complete workflows for users and providing interfaces that give you the sense of control over those workflows. It might be a little bit abstract the way I put it, but like we can go into an example, but that's kind of how I think about it. Is you would want your machines to do more work for you because there's some
Right.
intelligence involved, but you still need a sense of control and some some checks along the way, and you might want to edit or tweak. And so that's kind of how I think about tooling in the future.
Interesting. So please go ahead, Karim.
No, sorry, Abhishek. In my head, I'm trying to simplify it a bit. It sounds like almost like the need will not disappear, but it's the way we access and interact with that need that will continue evolving with the different technology that we have. So similar to the stuff you mentioned, Niko, about the LLMs, and I'm going to layer on top of that the Agentic AI. So it's going that extra step, going beyond here, and instead of just relying on us giving the exact instructions, like you pointed out, it's like I have to think about every little step. Now you're interacting in a way that is more streamlined, more efficient, but getting the same need, but just doing it better and more amplified way. Maybe I'm oversimplifying here, but that's what I understood, at least from you.
No, totally. I think basically you would want the agent or the system to do do the actual job, like in the sense that,
True.
I mean, for example, I'm thinking about this now for customer, like let's say you have I know I'm in my world, but like in this survey
Yeah.
world, but like you have a you have a customer, right? And they can give you they can give you a negative sentiment in their customer satisfaction survey. Okay, so you have that somewhere on the website or in the email footer, and okay, that's good that you capture that data, but what do you want to happen? Well, if a customer that has a high ticket item all of a sudden in their tone of voice actually mentions churn like talk, they say things that imply that they might churn, then you don't want this to be in some data lake that sometimes in 6 months somebody's going to analyze. What you would want is the system to say, hey, I'm not completely dumb. I'm identifying there's a churn risk here. I'm going to send you a Slack notification. Now, you obviously get to control whether or not you call the client, whether or not that is already something you knew. But I'm just saying I'm trying to think a little bit here. Like if I'm the system, I'm trying to think like what would my users need? Not oh, CSV file export. Good luck with that. That doesn't do a job
Yeah.
to be done for me. My job to be done is not to get a CSV file. My job to be done is to like don't lose customer.
Exactly.
So how can tools get me there? Is I think like the agentic way of thinking is like, okay, how can this actually provide the end-to-end job to be done? Yeah, and I think it's exciting times because you can actually get a job to be done. And I think in the past when I did this with teams, oftentimes it was funny because oftentimes I was like, yes, okay, so you got to think which job are you trying to solve? Which
Right.
problem, what job are you? And then usually you had to kind of invent some kind of contorted way because the tool could not do the full job. It could only get you to CSV. And so
Yeah.
you were like, the job to be done is I need the data in some format that I can later use. It's like, that was never true. Like you never needed to CSV. It was never true.
That is amazing. And because you are mentioning about all these recent tools and stuff, there's something that just came to my mind. Like we have been seeing like a huge influx of organizations or the startups getting a humongous amount of funding, to be honest. Like I heard a company named as Graphite who received 18 million of funding just to solve the problem of QA, right? Similarly, Lovable or we have Cursor who are reaching 100 million ARR because of this agentic AI. Now, I feel that because they're reaching there is because they're being assistants and not they're not trying to take the job out of individual, but they're trying to evolve with the help of engineers or the individuals, right? So whatever, like for example, I am a product manager, and I want to like increase my productivity. So for me, I what I do is like I will, to your point, if I had a tool something like yours, that will be making my life amazing, to be honest. But what usually anyone will do is like they will capture all the responses coming out of from Google forms, etc., or some other types of forms, and then get that information put inside the LLM. Maybe I'll try to get the data out of like Amplitude or like any other solutions like that, and then push that as well inside like LLM. And I will also want to get few of the transcripts from the sales meetings or maybe product like discovery calls, put that inside the LLM, and then try to identify, give me top 5 signals, what exactly my customer is trying to do. And that improves my productivity, of course, right? And just thinking out loud, like in the vertical AI, agentic AI space, if there is a world where I start getting a tool which can help me succeed with all these routes, which includes your surveys as well, that will make my life like amazing, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe just to add there, because I absolutely agree with you, and I forgot to mention that I think in the way tools work, in my mental model, how this works is exactly what you say. You don't want 18 tools that all I have their silo, because you would want to combine these data points. Now,
Right.
so what I think is what we will have is we will have data input tools, like data intake tools, right? And Gong is one, right? Because you have recorded sales calls or customer success calls. And a survey tool is another. It's just one channel. It's just forms, It's just
Right.
online forms. And then you might have other data from, let's say, a UX research consultancy who did a study, and you feed that all in, and you would want that in one place because you can cross-reference things. And so the way I think about it is from the beginning on, I thought, let's say, for example, for one data intake tool, which is forms or surveys, I thought, okay, what you would want is this data freely flowing to wherever you can connect the dots. So I never had the ambition, intention, or strategic direction to say, I want to own the data. I don't think that makes any sense for the user. Why
I see.
would the survey tool and Typeform, like they all do that? They all say, hey, you can maybe export a CSV, but like we try to keep the data mostly in the tool. Which is like, for me, this is a form, which is a gate, like it's a data intake process. And in the future, you want that data to be wherever you can work with it best. And
Exactly.
I'm sure you don't want to have isolated survey answers and isolated interview transcripts and isolated like in completely different places, you know? And so I think in the future, we can feed this data in and there's just a space for like solid data input layers. And so the way I think about it is we have an integration now with Next where you can go from your customer insights and you can say, you can with a prompt from their tool say like, we have these insights, we should probably do a follow-up survey on that. And then you can write in their interface like, hey, I need a survey on that. Enter. And with a prompt, it creates automatically a Juttu survey
Nice.
with that context of where of you know what we need. So we found out these user pain points, but we're not quite sure about the severity of them. Let's do a survey on that. And it per prompt creates a survey for that you can then send out, and then the data feeds back into your knowledge hub. You know? So then
Nice.
it's really like a thin interface layer that takes data in and puts it where you need it most. So that very much fits to what you said, is that you don't want these silos, you know?
So, are you also developing the integration of Juttu to other applications like?
Yeah,
Um, I see. Okay, that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
And why I was bringing these points that myself and Karim, we have been developing this tool Oppla, and as I was just mentioning before the start of the call, so not solving the surveys part, right? But we are solving some other parts. And what I believe is the main pain point of our customers is surveys is one thing that anyone wants to get the data from the users. And then you want to understand the feedback, a real-time feedback, which means like wherever the user is on your application, they can add their information in the context of the feedback so that the system automatically knows where exactly the user's feedback was originating from. And maybe it is Slack, maybe it is Gong or some other calls of like, all these multiple solutions, you are getting the feedback and stuff, right? And then you have the data analytics, wherein like similar to what Mixman Amplitude does is like they scroll through you as a user and try to understand what exactly was the user's behavior, right? I can bet on this one, at least with my 12 plus years of experience out of 100, that will be like 2 to 5 individuals as a PMs who will go every day in any of these data analytics solution just to see how users have been interacting with these tools, right? We only go there whenever we need to make a roadmap item or some kind of a those value addition that we need to figure it out what exactly we need to do, right? And in my mind, what I think very soon in the agentic AI space, because your tool and ours Oppla is all kind of sitting on the edge of the AI, right? So AI is improving our response, it is not helping us. Like our tool is our own like IP, right? Like it is its own like individual or like kind of a product in itself. But because of the AI, it is amplifying what the response this solve the problem that we are trying to solve over here, right? So for our tool, for Opply specifically, what we try to do is like, hey, we get all this data inside our solution, which includes like the workflows, the automations, and stuff like that. You just dump everything to the LLM, right? Well, not technically just dumping to the LLM. We are like working on the agentic, and then what we are doing is like automatically, as you were saying, Nico, like exactly what you mentioned. Automatically, the system analyzes what exactly the churn or kind of a additional information the surveys or the feedbacks or something has provided, and then on the basis of that, for that particular user, it goes through to understand what was the user path, right? What exactly user did, and then all using all these informations as well as the real time information on the internet for your competitors, it tries to identify, hey, is this specific user is also trying to connect with your competitors? If that is the case, that's where the signal comes into existence, and then you tell, like, you can notify the PMs or the stuff like that, that hey guys, your one customer is about to, like, you are about to lose your customer and about to lose this much of ARR or MRR, you need to focus here. And that is what Oppla as a solution that we are also trying to solve as a problem over here in the product space. So
Sounds
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, Karim, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. I mean, you've described the capabilities of Oppla perfectly, and spot on with aligned with what Niko you already talked about, the integration aspects and improving the workflows. And reality is very different than than what we read in our books about product management. That's super true. I mean, I've worked in product management before. I come in, the first day knocking on the doors, like, let's talk to the users. Are like, we don't have time. So I completely understand that pain point. Is like, okay, so how are we basing our decisions? Are we just, putting our finger up in the air and going, pointing at whichever direction we want? Sometimes it is, yes. I've met CPOs, they come and tell me that it's a product sense. So what does that mean? It's like, did you have a good dinner? Did you have a good lunch? And your stomach and gut is giving you a good feeling about which direction? I don't know. But end of the day, it's really about, having a better sense of what to build and having a better sense on your direction. And that's what Abhishek just pointed out, to these signals. So having all these different data roaming or flying all over the place, and like you pointed out, Nico, no one's paying attention, no one's having the time to pay attention. So what Oppla is trying to do is remind people that data matters, but also tell them that there is a good way to actually action on data, and it's not just about insights, but about giving direction that is very clear in terms of how to get your product from point A to point B and succeed, and using the best of technology right now to get there faster and more impactful. That's really what it is about, if I were to put it in layman terms.
Yeah, but that's very good. It's also important to put it in very simple terms. Yeah.
Agreed. And every time, like, myself and Karim, we discuss about these ideas. Like, we think like everyone is trying to create an application. So everyone is trying to go from idea to app stage. But what beyond that, right? Like app and beyond. So that is, like, I believe with your tool Juttu and like our tool Oppla, we are trying to solve what exactly you need to do after you have created an application. Before you have created the application, you can use these cursor, lovable, and all these tools. But what to do next is what we are trying to solve. And I believe we are almost end of our podcast. Before we leave, one more question for you, Niko. How soon can we integrate your solution with the API integration on Oppla? Because of course, our customers will definitely want to use Juttu for sure.
Our roadmap is extremely flexible because we're small and very agile. So as soon as there's any demand, this will be done in a week. I I would be super excited for that. I think the whole concept of being a data input layer is something that excites me. I think there's a lot of people who are figuring, like, who are more like from what you described. I think that is a hard problem. I think it's a hard problem to be to find space in this kind of messy internal workflow of, like, we have data everywhere. How do people make decisions internally? That is a lot of internal processes and a lot of, like, figuring out how these people work so you can fit yourself in there. The reason why but it's an important one. It's just that, like, for me, I'm very happy to be on the outside of this. Yeah, so that's why I'm happy to integrate, because I realized in the first version that we had launched, it failed not because it didn't help people to get more interviews. It was because the internal processes, access to users, time management, etc., was the real issue. And so getting teams to have the signals in the right place, to give it to the right people, to give it them at the right times, and to compete for their attention internally, as product managers are notoriously overworked. I think that is a very important, crucial challenge, and it sounds like you're tackling it. So I wish you the best of success. and I'm going to be over here comfortably trying to build just this thin layer of data input and trying to provide like enough value there that it becomes a business. So that's why it fits perfectly, and I'm happy to talk integrations.
Amazing, Nico. Amazing. Now we are almost at the end of our podcast, and before we leave, I want to say really, really thank you to you, Nico, for giving us your time. And we surely hope to get you back again on our podcast very soon and have the integrations finalized with Opla. And many, many more wishes for you to be successful. Right. So
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much for having me.
Thank you, Nico.
Thank you.